Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Daily Gwei Refuel, where I recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and today's the 31st of October, 2022. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So I introduced you guys, I think last week, or maybe the week before, to this new relayer that came online, this new non-censoring Mev-boost relayer under the Twitter account build.0x69.eth, and you can track the relayer here and get all the information about it at relayor with 3 O's .wtf. Now, since launching, I believe it was last week, it hasn't been very long actually, maybe 4 or 5 days, but since launching, they've almost acquired 4,000 validators using their relay. Now, that is almost 1% of all validators on the network. So there is 456,000 validators. So 1% would be 4,560-ish. So yeah, I mean, it grew pretty quickly to almost 1% of all validators. Now, obviously, all validators aren't using Mev-boost. That number is, I think it's about half. So yeah, it's already, like if you count of the Mev-boost enabled relayers, it's already a pretty healthy chunk there, which is really nice to see because from my understanding, at the end of the day, the number one thing here is just encouraging relay competition. Obviously, there are going to be some that censor, some that don't censor, but the more competition there is, the better it is from a return perspective, because there's better competition between the relays and people can choose which one they want to go with based on the profitability of each one. And then logically, the ones that aren't censoring should be more profitable, but it depends on the sorts of transactions they're censoring, right? Like, for example, the usage of Tornado Cash has basically plummeted because of the sanctions that were put on them. But let's just say, for example, sanctions were put on, I know I use the Uniswap example a lot, but let's just say that, for example, right? There's a lot of profit to be had from Uniswap-related MEV transactions. So you would imagine that in that world, if, say, Flashbots and the other censoring relays were to censor Uniswap-related transactions, everyone, well, not everyone, but like most people would be logically incentivized via pure profit incentives to switch to a non-censoring relayer to capture that MEV, right? So as I mentioned last week, it's all really a profit-based incentive at the end of the day. Now, the creator of this new non-censoring relay put out a tweet over the weekend saying, if you're a well-known company or DAO in the space interested in operating a neutral permissionless relay without any filtering, please DM. Code is open source and we can provide setup instructions, pay for infrastructure costs, build blocks with no fees for this relay. So this is really cool. It's basically Builder 0x69 offering their services. I believe it's not just one person, it's a team, but basically offering their services to anyone who wants to run a permissionless / non-censoring relayer. This is obviously, as I was saying, one of the things that's needed to combat censorship, a more diverse builder market, a more diverse relayer market, which it seems that we're getting. Now, I don't believe this builder is actually on this relay, I should say, is actually on the mevwatch.info website. But if I bring up that website, I'll bring it up over here. You can see which ones are being tracked. It's all the ones that we're used to, right? The Flashbots, Eden Network, Block Native, and 3 of Blockrout's ones. One of them's regulated, one of them's max profit, one of them's ethical, and Manifold as well. So the only ones that are non-censoring right now on MEV-Watch, that MEV-Watch tracks, are the Blockrout max profit and Blockrout ethical, with Manifold being one of the non-censoring ones as well. And the Blockrout max profit's actually been growing, which is really cool to see. So it's accounting for over 6% now of just MEV boosted blocks here, and Flashbots is around 80%. I think Flashbots as kind of, I mean, it goes between 80 and 85%, as I mentioned last week, but it's good to see a non-censoring one growing. But as I mentioned, the new relayer is not being tracked yet. If it was, I believe it should be around the same as Blockrout ethical at about 2.65% market share. So yeah, it's not nothing. Obviously, Flashbots is dominating with 80%, but you know, the second in second place now is Blockrout max profit at 6.2%, which is non-censoring. So very cool to see this market evolving over time here. But yeah, if you're interested in running a relayer, definitely get in touch with Builder 0x69. I'll link this tweet in the YouTube description below. But speaking of Mev-boost as well, there is a comment that I found in the daily general discussion on ETH Finance from Ostons here, talking all about what it would take to run an Mev-boost relay. Now, the progress is underway, researching this and coming up with a set of data and set of information for people to reference. And this person has been working with this Kudita. Hopefully I said that, or Kudeta, I don't know how to say that. Hopefully I said it right. On setting up a neutral relay, which they are calling Lattice. to be run and funded as a public good. So this research is going to lead to a basically public good Mev-boost relayer. So another relayer is coming down the pipeline. Now there is a bit more information in the comment here, which I'll link in the YouTube description below. But as you can see, the relayer market is far from mature, guys. It's actually very, very immature as it exists today. In no healthy market should one participant, such as Flashbots in this instance, have over 80% market share. That is not a healthy market, especially when it comes to Mev-boost relayers. We would ideally like to see a split similar to what we see maybe within the client diversity, right? Where one client maybe has 35 or 40%, but then we have more diversity there. So relay diversity is obviously very important, but it's different to client diversity in that, I mean, obviously there's a lot of differences, but in terms of the social differences, as I explained last week, I think people that use relayers are much more motivated by profit incentives than being altruistic. So from that perspective, we just need more relayers coming online that compete with each other to offer that those profits to validators to point their to stakers, I should say, to point their validators towards various ones here. So yeah, you can check out the rest of this comment. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. Now, speaking of returns and rewards, Pintail has a new article out yesterday looking at validator returns post-merge, comparing with their previous modeling and considering the growing role of third-party block builders. Now, you can go give this blog post a read. I'll link it in the YouTube description below, but I wanted to draw your attention to one chart in particular, which was this one here. The performance of block builders over time. This is going back to the 15th of September, so this is about 5 or 6 weeks worth of data here, and this shows the median daily block value for each builder. Now, this also includes the new builder, which is builder 0x69. That I spoke about just before. That builder has become the most profitable one here, which is pretty cool to see, right? This is the newest relayer, and it's non-censoring, and it has become the most profitable. Flashbots is actually the third most profitable. Eden Network is the second most profitable here, but Eden Network is also censoring. But in terms of like non-censoring ones, Bloxroute Max Profit is coming in, I believe, around 4th, and competing with the orange line here, which is other builder. But basically, the non-censoring relayer is number 1, and you can see how that's evolved over time. They weren't always number 1, but that's very cool to see because, that encourages people to use that relayer instead of something like Flashbots or an Eden Network. Now, I know I went through this last week, but just a refresher here. I do truly believe that most validators, if not all of them, do not care about censorship in either way. Like, they don't care about if they're using Mev-boost relays. All they care about is profit. Because at the end of the day, if you're outsourcing your block building duties and taking on that little bit of extra risk, right, you're basically doing that, and you're outsourcing it to an Mev-boost relay, you're doing that for profit purposes. That's it. You're not doing it for any other purpose because you can build blocks on your own as a validator. There's no, it's not like you have to upgrade your hardware in order to be able to build blocks. That has been what you have been doing since genesis of the beacon chain, or since you started staking. And then obviously in a post-merge world, it became a little bit more, like intensive to do it because you had to run a full node, right? And a full Ethereum 1 node, so to speak, or an execution layer node, I should say. But, if you're outsourcing it to an Mev-boost relay, literally the only reason you would do that is for profit, because otherwise there's no point. You just build blocks on your own, right? So if it's just a pure profit thing here, then censorship doesn't even come into it. As I mentioned last week, it's a cause and effect. The cause of the censorship, the effect of the censorship is caused by the profit motives here. So when you think of it like that, we can see that if a more profitable builder comes along, then people will switch to them, and that builder will get some really nice growth very quickly, which they actually have. Now, there is also another thing here, which isn't just profit, it's also brand awareness, because Flashbots has incredible brand awareness and incredible network effect, but as time goes on, that will be chipped away at. It's not going to remain at 80%. I think it's only there today because of that legacy brand awareness and network effect, and because this is relatively recent that other people have been able to build their own relays. Honestly, it's only been, I think, couple of months, I believe, since people have been able to build their own relays. So give it some time to see how this market evolves. And this is on top of all the other work that's happening to, beat back this censorship, right? To make it basically impossible to engage in censorship on the network, and as well as things like PBS. So we'll see how this develops over time. I'll obviously keep tracking this and keep you guys updated here. But I'm really hoping that mevwatch.info will support this new relay and be quick to support any other future relays, because that'll make this look better. Because right now 63% of all blocks are censoring, right, or quote unquote OFAC compliant, but that's not including every relay. That's only including 7 of them, which it seems that, you know, looking at Pintail's chart here, there is actually, what is it? I think there's 9 of them right now. So we need to, we need to get those 2 on there. Obviously, the builder 0x69 isn't there, and then I think the other builder section here isn't here either. Oh well, no, it's actually including self-built. So it's just missing the builder at 0x69 right now, which I'm sure it will include in time. But anyway, you can go give a Pintails blog post a read for yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. All right, last thing on Mev-boost is just a blog post out here called Mev-boost using EigenLayer. Now, EigenLayer has become a very popular project within the Ethereum ecosystem lately. It's basically using this concept of restaking your ETH to power whatever services they want to offer, such as data availability chain. But you can go check out this blog post just for some context around, preserving block proposer agency with Mev-boost using EigenLayer. So definitely go check this out. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. All right, shifting to some other core updates. So Julio from the Aragon team has put out a tweet thread today saying, yesterday saying, and now thanks to IPFS, I was able to bring down the retrieval of Verkle trees from 17.5 hours down to roughly 4 to 6 hours, depending on bandwidth, by using snapshots uploaded to IPFS, providing first sync time up to Aragon standards. And there's a thread here which you can read. It's a very short thread. I'll link in the YouTube description. But this goes back to what I covered, I think, last week or the week before, that Julio was talking about, which was this Verkle trees, which is part of the Verge upgrade that's coming to Ethereum, basically changing from, I don't believe it's binary trees. I believe it's hex Patricia trees, I think, to Verkle trees to increase scalability of the network and increase sustainability of the network from my understanding. But you can give this little thread a read. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. But I think that's almost it on the core dev update. This is, I guess, like not exactly a core dev update, but definitely in the same area. So Ethereum.org's Q4 roadmap is now out. So you can join thousands of contributors in making the best Ethereum resource even better. So you can check out this roadmap on GitHub. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you, but it seems like there's a lot on here. So if you're looking for ways to contribute to the Ethereum ecosystem, this is definitely one of those ways to contribute and make a big impact. So definitely go check out the Ethereum.org roadmap. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. And just finally here, I wanted to highlight that Ethereum on ARM is making some great progress on running Ethereum mainnet on a Rock 5B, which is a small little Raspberry Pi alternative here, I believe. So Go Ethereum and Nimbus is syncing in 24 hours. Geth and Prism in 25 hours as well. Geth and Lighthouse 30 hours. But, Nethermind and Nimbus 11 hours. So as you guys know, Nimbus is a consensus layer client that has been optimized for low powered hardware, right? So it doesn't require some beefy PC to run or some normal PC to run. It can run on something like this. So very cool to see this. I mean, those sync times are pretty out of this world anyway for a device such as this. I mean, 25 hours, that's nothing. Like within a day, you can get this spun up on this board and you could basically start validating on the network. How cool is that? I mean, this is why we are trying to keep Ethereum decentralized, trying to keep hardware requirements sane, instead of requiring data centers to run the Ethereum network, is because we want people to be able to run nodes on devices like this and run validators as well. So very, very cool to see this. All right, on to some other updates. So L2Beat has released another big update to their website, which is their activity section, which is all about transactions. Now, there's a thread here which you can read, but I want to go over what this is. So basically, the activity section on the L2Beat website tracks the activity of Ethereum versus all the L2s out there in terms of TPS and transaction count, and they also give you the 7-day change as well. Now, Chris from the L2Beat team gave a deep dive here on what this actually represents, which I'll link in the YouTube description below. But I do want to talk about these metrics a little bit here. So first thing you have to consider when looking at this is that TPS across Ethereum and various L2s is not created equal for a number of different reasons. Now, I've discussed this before, but basically the gas costs are not a one-to-one mapping. There are different ways of metering gas on these different networks. For example, Arbitrum 1 handles gas differently to Ethereum mainnet. And you can actually, and it's kind of hard to translate that to Ethereum mainnet in terms of TPS and transactions and counting. And Chris here from the L2Beat team says here that, of course, transactions per second is not a perfect metric, but it's still meaningful. And, he believes that a scaling factor is one of the most exciting metrics to watch in the L2 space. It explains how many more transactions are performed in L1 together with L2s compared to just L1. So basically, this new scaling factor metric says that there is 2.2 times more transactions being performed if you take Ethereum and the L2s, which I think is very, very cool because, as I've said before, you can't just look at Ethereum layer 1 activity anymore. You have to look at all the layer 2s on Ethereum as well, because that is obviously how Ethereum is scaling. But as I said, these TPS numbers, they're going to get better over time. And transaction numbers in general, they're not one-to-one mapped to Ethereum layer 1. There are pretty major differences between them, and I believe L2Beat is going to be working on making sure that those differences are shown and are apparent to users. But very cool to see this update here. They now have 3 sections: total value locked, risk analysis, and activity, as well as their bridges, a section here which tracks TVL of bridges and a risk analysis as well. So you can go check out all of that, as well as Chris's thread, which I'll link in the YouTube description below. All right, so zkSync's Baby Alpha went live over the weekend. So they said here, we are proud to announce that today we hit our Baby Alpha milestone and have begun the march to fair onboarding alpha and full launch alpha. Now, you can check out the full details of this announcement in this blog post, but you can also see the zkSync public roadmap. So this is mainnet alpha, which they're calling Baby Alpha, and this is where we're at today. And in the future, we're going to be going towards fair onboarding alpha, full launch alpha, improved developer and user experience, layer 3 proof of concept, which is called opportunity, which I'm going to talk about in a sec, and then decentralization. I think this is a good probably time to discuss where the L2s currently are in terms of what their mainnet actually is. Like, you can have something on mainnet, right? So it's obviously not on testnet, but that doesn't mean that thing is a public mainnet, right? Like in terms of being like Ethereum layer 1. It's public in the sense that anyone can interact with it, but it is not like a beta or like a full production release mainnet. It is an alpha mainnet, and that's what a lot of these things are. I mean, even something that's been around for a while, such as Arbitrum 1 or Optimism, or the Optimistic Ethereum network, they're still technically in beta, right? And even some L1s are still in beta. So you have to understand that when interacting with these things, especially the L2s, because I believe none of the L2s today, except Fuel V1, which I mean has no activity on it, none of them today are living up to what they're supposed to be, which is a full-blown network with fraud proofs in the case of optimistic rollups, with decentralized provers and sequences, with no basically admin keys, none of that. None of the networks are even close to that right now, but that's okay. There is a road and a path to get there. And the reason why it's okay on L2 is because L1 is already decentralized. L1 is already in production, has been for a long time. It has a full-blown governance process with very engaged community members and very engaged governance actors, whereas L2s are not anywhere close to that yet. They need time to build to that. I think Arbitrum and Optimism are at the head of the pack right now because they've been live the longest, but zkSync obviously is live with their mainnet alpha now. You're going to have these other ones going live like Polygon ZK Solutions. You got Scroll, Starknet Alpha is live on mainnet as well, right? So, and I mean a bunch of others too. I'm not going to name all of them, but over time, they'll get better, they'll get more decentralized, they'll have a community, they'll obviously issue their tokens in order to get people to be able to be part of that decentralized governance process. But in saying all of that, it's still very cool to see that zkSync's 2.0 Baby Alpha is now live on mainnet. And as I said, you can read this blog post to check out what that means for you, and I'll link that in the YouTube description. But I also mentioned something called Opportunity, which is zkSync's layer 3 blockchain that they're working on. Now, I spoke about layer 3 a while ago. Starkware started talking about it, and then I think Vitalik talked about it, and I was like, okay, well, layer 3 seems like it's going to be a thing. But this thing that zkSync is building, which is called Opportunity, they plan to release a proof of concept of it in the first quarter of 2023. So, as the block reports here, the layer 3, still in the initial development phase, is aimed at further improving the scalability of zkSync's blockchain infrastructure. Matter Labs first announced it was working on a layer 3 in early October, and originally named it Pathfinder. So I remember I covered Pathfinder. It has now renamed the project to Opportunity. So what a layer 3 is that it is still built on Ethereum, but it's built on a specific layer 2. So obviously this will be built on zkSync 2.0 and be built a layer on top of that, and then it will prove down to layer 2, and then to the zkSync layer 2, then that will prove down to, post, I guess, like a proof down to Ethereum layer 1. Just like how, I guess, Starkware is going to build a layer 3 on top of Starknet, for example. So, and there is going to be like layer 4 and layer 5 as well. It's just like layers of abstraction, basically, and you get more and more scale the higher you go up. There are obviously trade-offs for these things, but that's basically what it is. And it's not us just just inventing new layers for the sake of it. There is actually distinctions here that are made, and it's all about improving the user experience, because I guess like that's what it should all be about at the end of the day: improving the user experience, improving the scalability, which obviously improves the user experience, and lowering fees to basically zero. Because I believe the end state, no matter how we get there, is that fees for the end user are going to be zero, and they'll be abstracted away, and then fees just will still be there, but the end user will see it as zero, basically. So yeah, bunch of awesome updates out of the zkSync ecosystem. I'll link them in the YouTube description for you to read more about. All right, this tweet, there we go. Actually, one more. Oh no, this is not zkSync. This is Starknet. So Ernesto here, who was previously CTO at Aave, now is a contributor at Aave, put together a thread about the Aave Starknet Phase 1 project, in which he participated among several others, and it's been finished. So I covered this, I believe, last week, but basically this thread you can go give a read and see exactly what is Phase 1 of the Aave Starknet deployment. Now, this is Aave's first deployment on a non-EVM blockchain, I believe, or non-EVM compatible / equivalent blockchain. So that's very, very cool. I wonder if they're using that transpiling tool. I believe they are using that transpiling tool that Nethermind created, where you can go from Solidity to Cairo. So very cool. But anyway, you can read this thread. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. All right, so an update out of 0x splits over the weekend. So you can now launch your own liquid splits. So liquid splits use NFTs to make ownership in a split transferable. Each NFT holder gets their corresponding share of the split. So starting today, you can create them in the app. Try it at split.new, and there's a blog post here for you to check out as well. So this is pretty cool. It's a pretty cool use of the NFT, I guess, standard, right? So as they say here, liquid splits use an NFT contract plus a mutable split to automatically update recipients according to NFT holders. This gives recipients the freedom to transfer their shares however they choose between their own wallets, to friends and family, or to anyone using OpenSea. So for example, imagine you set up a split, and it's a 10-person split, and you issue 10 NFTs, and those go to various holders. Now, imagine that person doesn't want to be part of the split anymore for whatever reason. They sell the NFT to someone else. Well, now that person is part of the split, and they're getting any money that's going through that split. Practical use cases here, potentially things like royalties, for example, right? Potentially things like a DAO. So for example, there could be a DAO that issues NFTs to contributors, and then once they stop contributing, that NFT is revoked and given to someone else, or maybe it's just deleted. And then once it's deleted, the split readjusts itself, and it just goes to the rest of the holders. You know, it obviously reweights itself. So yeah, there are definitely practical use cases here. And splits, I mean, I'm an investor in splits here, but it's one of my favorite protocols because it's just so simple, and it just provides such an awesome value, and it's such an awesome public good for the Ethereum ecosystem. So really cool to see them launch this new liquid splits feature. You can go check it out. We'll link it in the YouTube description below. All right, so Grid Plus has an update out over the weekend. So they said, in our continuing effort to empower users, we present our latest work, which allows users to operate a private transaction routing service at home, server at home. Check this video / readme to get set up with Lattice Connect V2 and Frame. So you guys know I'm big on privacy, and obviously I'm big on Grid Plus Lattice. It is my favorite hardware wallet, that's for sure. I love them, and I've talked about them a lot on the Refuel before. But basically, with this new tool here, it allows you to set up your own private transaction routing server at home, which is very, very cool. So running the Lattice Connect yourself provides several advantages here. It doesn't require running an external broker, offers the fastest messaging route possible for a Lattice, provides the highest amount of privacy available when using a Lattice, Lattice 1 I should say, 0 configuration changes required, and setup takes less than 5 minutes. So if you are someone who has a Lattice 1 and you want to try this out, it is a little bit technical. You do have to get involved with the command line using Frame, but you can definitely go check this out. I'll link it in the YouTube description below. But yeah, just generally, guys, as I've said it before and I'll say it again, scaling and privacy is still the two most important things on Ethereum and in crypto, bar nothing else, really. I mean, the implications of both of those things, and they go hand in hand as well, affect everything else in this ecosystem. So I'm going to keep beating the drum on that and keep you guys informed on any tools that make staying private and becoming more scalable easier. All right, so speaking of privacy, Vitalik had a great thread out yesterday about regulation that I wanted to talk a little bit about. So obviously, regulation of DeFi has been a big topic of discussion, and I've gone through it a lot due to comments from SBF and this bill that was introduced to Congress and things like that. But Vitalik started off his thread by saying, should I publicly blab my opinions about crypto regulation more? Feels unfair to let other people get attacked by CT, crypto Twitter, but never actually poke my own head out. Now, I'm not going to read his whole thread, but he does have some points here that I agree with. So the one that I agree with most strongly is this one. He says, the KYC on DeFi front ends idea does not seem very pointful to me. It would annoy users but do nothing against hackers. Hackers write custom code to interact with contracts already. Exchanges are clearly a much more sensible place to do their KYC, and that's happening already. Now, I've mentioned this before a lot of times on the Refuel. Like, if you're going to do something and put a regulation on something, you can't just punish the honest users and then make it so that more sophisticated users can get around it with relative ease, right? And even if you did a KYC on a DeFi front end, someone could just spin up a front end that wasn't KYC. Just like we're seeing with the Mev-boost relays, there are some that censor and some that don't. There'll be some DeFi front ends that KYC, such as a centralized exchange acting as a DeFi front end, for example, and then there'll be some that don't. It doesn't actually stop anything because the smart contracts themselves, unless you KYC those, you're not actually stopping anything, right? And if you do KYC a smart contract, then I don't think that's going to get much usage. Unless it's something super popular that people can't live without, I really don't see how that's going to get much usage there. And then the second part here where he says, exchanges are a much more sensible place to do their KYC, and that's happening already. I totally agree with that. Even though I will get into this in a sec, I don't like KYC generally. Obviously, it happening at the centralized exchange level is the most sensible place for it to happen. Now, Vitalik also continues his thread by saying, here's some regulations on DeFi front ends that could be more helpful, which include limits on leverage, requiring transparency about what audits, FV or other security checks were done on contract code. FV stands for formal verification, and usage gated by knowledge-based tests instead of plutocratic net worth minimum rules. Now, I don't necessarily agree with all of this. Limits on leverage, if someone actually really wants to go 100x leverage, right, on something, they're not going to use the front end if the front end's barring them. They're just going to go to the back end, right? I don't think that would actually do anything by putting a limit on the front end. Second, requiring transparency about audits, formal verification, or other security checks were done on the contract code. That should be standard practice anyway for any app. Like, I didn't even think that should be something that we have to ask for. It literally should be standard practice to show, hey, we audited the contracts, we formally verified them, here they are, they're open source. That should just be expected. And we shouldn't even have to talk about that. But unfortunately, not on every project's like that, so we do. But I totally agree with that point. And then the third point, this is a bit controversial. I kind of like half agree with it, where he says usage gated by knowledge-based tests instead of plutocratic net worth minimum rules. Okay, I agree with using knowledge-based tests instead of net worth-based tests. But at the same time, those tests could just have their answers posted online and people could just cheat on them, right? Like, there's no way to police that. So it kind of is a bit of like putting a KYC on a DeFi front end. I don't think it actually helps with anything, right? So those are my thoughts on that in particular. Now, my thoughts on KYC generally. KYC, the way it is currently structured, is really bad for two main reasons. It creates a massive centralized honeypot of data that hackers can get access to, right? And they have gotten access to it. And it becomes really dangerous for specific people if they get access to it. Obviously, if you're someone who's just an everyday person, you're not going to be that worried, right? It depends though. If you are just an everyday person, you're not famous or anything like that, and KYC is linked to your net worth, well, you start to worry a little bit, especially if the KYC includes your address, which gets leaked as part of a hack. You start to worry, right? And it becomes much more concerning. But if you're someone of notability or you're famous or you get targeted specifically because of that, then it becomes an even bigger worry, right? So there's that. And then the second thing is that it's not just hackers that take advantage of this data, it's governments. Governments have full view into this. And the whole reason why KYC exists in the first place is because of governments requiring it to happen. Now, I want to say that I'm not against KYC. I'm against KYC as it's done today. I think there was a comment by Frozen Fire in the Daily Gwei Discord channel when he basically said that, if we had a way to do KYC in a privacy preserving way where people store their data themselves and then they prove to a service that they are who they say they are, and it basically unlocks a door for them. So basically their KYC is like a key to unlock a door that they retain full custody of. That's how it should be done. And I've argued this point before as well with something like a Sysmo badge that could be used for this. So I'm fully on board with that. But KYC as it exists today is extremely predatory. And there is a perfect example here that Niraj from Coin Center posted where he said how KYC is being weaponized in Myanmar here. I'm saying that country's name right. I know how to pronounce this and I'm still saying it right. Myanmar. Oh my God. Someone's going to rip me to shreds for saying it like that. But anyway, in that country, the junta began implementing strict KYC rules, forcing all users of the digital banking system to more fully identify themselves to their providers. This was paired with a crackdown on the availability of physical cash. Now, all economic activity has been forced into a better surveilled system that is marked by the aggressive and seemingly random freezing of bank accounts with little recourse as the government attempts to stem flows of money to resistance fighters. So basically, by KYCing, by having a centralized digital identity and digital financial life, you are at the mercy of a government. And the government, depending where you are, is not very trustworthy, right? Like even the ones that you consider to be trustworthy, I mean, I know this is a bit of a divisive topic here, but just to give it another example, remember what happened with the Canadian truckers, right? Like where the Prime Minister of Canada, I think do they call it a Prime Minister or a President of Canada? Anyway, he basically froze the bank accounts of these protesters, and then went even a step further, I believe, and started targeting the people that were donating to these truckers, right? So that's just another example about how centralization leads to these really bad outcomes. But on top of that, having KYC and linking actual identity to it, which is, I mean, every centralized financial platform that you use has a form of KYC. It just makes it even easier for a government to basically clamp down on any voices that they don't like, and it basically turns what we love about Western democracies into the CCP, basically, right? Into China. What we don't like about about China, about the CCP, about all the controls they have. And imagine if we let the government do what they do to our financial infrastructure, to the internet itself. Imagine if we had to KYC to send an email, right? Like that would just be insane. It would just be absolutely crazy. So why should we have to KYC to and give all this data for financial applications? I know there are places where it makes sense, right? As I said, like to basically prove who you say you are, so that there's recourse for centralized institutions. Obviously, for banks, it's very different because they give out uncollateralized loans and stuff like that, unsecured loans. But I mean, it's secured by your KYC, so to speak, right? It's secured by your personal. If the loan goes bad, the bank can chase you in the real world. But we don't have that in a fully global, pseudonymous, alternative financial system. So it's not no KYC. It's like screw KYC as it exists today, because all it does is give more power to both hackers who leak this data and from this honeypot, and governments as well. So that's my general view on KYC and why I don't like how it's currently implemented. But I do see a place for KYC implemented using zk technology, specifically something like a Sysmo badge, which allows you to basically prove who you say you are without revealing any of that data to a third party, which I think is the best of both worlds when it comes down to it. But anyway, I've gone over time. I've ranted a lot here. I'm going to finish up with just wanted to highlight this thread from Brian Garber here that I missed a few weeks ago. But basically, it's a thread called the Web3 Job Bible. So if you're still looking for a job in crypto, this is another resource for you to check out. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to check out. But that's going to be it for today. So thank you everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Thanks everyone.